Good. Right. So we start. So 3 weeks ago, I had a LinkedIn post. The LinkedIn post when we were able to invite this man on stage, and the post said, "Everyone in marketing knows Seth Godin. For me, before I know Seth Godin, there was Dom Mason." So today, I would love to invite you all to listen to this very interesting topic. And here's a short sentence. So Dom is a really humble man. You may not know him, but you definitely know his work. If you have ever fly Singapore Airlines or ever shop at Vivo City in Singapore, if you heard about Empire City in Vietnam, or one of the section yesterday, Dragon Capital, the financial giant Dragon Capitals, then definitely you would know him. He's the man behind to do all the amazing job. So please give a big applause to Dom Mason.
Thank you, Jessie. I think I said this 3 years ago. I wish that just half of that was true. So thanks anyway. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not let our audience wait any longer. Let's start. Please tell us the most interesting insight, the most common nuance things that you all heard about when it comes to brand.
Okay. When people ask me, what do you do? And I say branding, their reaction is very much this. Brand is a logo. I would like to say to them, it's actually about scaling or helping business scale their reputations strategically and also sustainably. But if I said that, I'd get a very blank look on their face. They think I'd be speaking a foreign language. But let's start off perhaps by using this example here. This logo was designed in 1972. Does anybody recognize this logo?
Louder, please.
Singapore Airlines. Has anybody flown on Singapore Airlines, just out of interest? Okay, this gentleman here, okay. Was it cheap? No. So are you happy paying a premium just because of the logo? Right. Okay, so by definition then, a brand has to be more than just a logo. This is what you're paying for. You're paying for superior customer service. And you're not just paying for a pretty face in a sarong kebaya. The Singapore girl has got to go through the longest training of any cabin crew. She knows about wine, she knows first aid, she knows food. She even knows about culture, because she has to read the different cultural nuances on the aircraft. How do I talk to a Vietnamese versus, say, a German, for example? I should just pause there. She's got quite a few questions for me, so I'm going to have to...
Yeah, so when I told my mom that I work at a brand consultancy, and my mom asked me, okay. So that logo must come from you. You hear me clearly now? Okay. Yeah, so this is all about logo. So I have a question. Why do you think so many founders and leaders, they still equate their brand solely on the visual identity, on the logo itself? Why they are so obsessed with just the logo?
Well, I think obviously you need to register a trademark. You have to protect your intellectual property. So that's the business reason for being fixed on a logo. But it is actually more than that. It's about creating an experience. And it takes time. It takes time, and it also takes resources to do that. But this brand is worth $3 billion as of last year.
Wow, so with that, I would pause here for a while. If anyone had any concern or any question first about the first point, because we're going to go through 5 points. So for the first point, anyone had any question regarding the logo? Right.
Okay. Sorry. So It will reduce your costs in terms of content creation. It will improve your efficiency in terms of building the brand. But there's a slight watch out because often strong brands have got very, very simple ideas. So Singapore Airlines, the idea is a great way to fly. And that's personified by this lady here. And her persona is based on the romance of travel. So once AI can get something very, very meaningful and very, very succinct, then it will change the way brands are built. But right now, in my experience, AI tends to generate too many words. And ideally, you want to have as few as possible. Perhaps I can ask the ladies in the room a question. Does any one of you recognize this brand? Right, so you've Tiffany. But there's no logo there. How did you recognize it was Tiffany, sir? The color. So they registered the color in 1989, and this color is officially called Tiffany Blue. Even the shape of the box as well. Of course, they have a logo, but they've gone beyond that to create something that's an asset, an iconic asset. Yeah?
So I want to ask about, besides the logo, what is your second most common assumptions about the brand?
I hear this a lot. So why do I need a brand? I've got a vision and mission statement. I'd like to just tell you a story, if you don't mind. Apart from Seth Godin, this was the man who gave me the reason to go into branding. Wally Owens was the pioneer of corporate branding. And Wally had this trick. He would go into some of the boardrooms of Germany, France, the UK, Spain. He'd sit with the board of directors and he'd show them a slide with their mission statement and 5 of their competitors. The reaction was immediate and it was always the same. All these statements look similar. They don't differentiate you. They're worked out by management consultants, and sometimes even the board members themselves couldn't recognize their own vision and mission statement. So a vision and mission and values don't really give you a strong brand. What companies are doing now is they're looking for something more purposeful, something that's aspirational, inspirational, something that's unique to them, ideally.
So Dom, how do you define purpose? Like, I ask a lot of people and they say, my purpose is just making money. And you cannot write that like, our purpose is making money, or I just want to be the best. What is the right question to ask to define the purpose of the brand?
But I think it's why. Why do you exist, and how do you want to make money in a way that's scalable and ideally unique? So again, I've got a couple of logos here, or letters. Can anyone recognize the first one? IBM. Second one, Rolls-Royce. Third one's a little harder, ANZ. N for, well done. The last one, Dove. So each of these brands have got a very succinct statement. It's not a vision and mission statement. It's more like a purpose statement. So IBM is arguably about industry-leading technology solutions for business advantage. Rolls-Royce, yes, they do aircraft engines as well, but they're about the pinnacle of luxury. ANZ is delivering seamless banking solutions across Asia-Pac. Nestle is the world's leading nutrition, health, and wellness company. And my favorite one is because they have 2 words, real beauty. And I think if you can get to a brand purpose statement that uses as fewer words and as more meaningful words as possible, that is more valuable than a vision and mission statement. And just a quick example, I think, Jessie, you mentioned there was a gentleman from, was it Dragon Capital here yesterday? So Dragon Capital's purpose is a trusted gateway. They bring the world of financial investing to Vietnam, and they bring Vietnam to the financial world. That's their purpose. And this is a picture of them, I think, is it in Times Square, New York City? So they've started to scale their business beyond Vietnam through their brand. So I'm starting to repeat myself a little bit here, Jessie, and sometimes people think the more brand constructs I have, the better my brand. So you get asked for a positioning, a proposition, a platform, a DNA, pillars, promises, and you end up with just too many words. Now, I know that you can't see that slide very well there, but this was in the old railway station in Singapore. So when you took a train to Malaysia, operated by KTM, you walk past this wall with all these posters on them. My Malay is not very good, but I'll translate it for you. From the top left, that's your vision statement. Then you've got your mission statement. You've got a quality standards, and then you've got a slogan. We're only 30% of the way through. They've got an objective, functions, another objective, more functions. Bottom left, core values, of which there are 9. A pledge, a prayer, and a song.
Let me pause here for a while. Who remember 3 out of 9? 3 out of 9 words that he just mentioned.
So I would bet money that anybody working from KTM couldn't articulate their brand because there's just too much. There's just too many words. I know it's an extreme example, but recently I was working for a very large Singapore company whose name appears on the top of Saigon Centre, so I won't mention their name, but you'll know who they are. And I was talking to the lady, the corporate comms brand head. So this is someone who'd been with Keppel for many years. And I said, look, I don't want to embarrass you, but you've got 7 values. Can you name them for me? She managed to get 4 right. And this is the brand manager with those values.
Test me. Don't test me, Gradion people. Please don't. So this is my questions. Why? Why human being, why people tend to make it so complicated?
Because they can be lazy. It can take a lot more work to get it down to a few words than it can be just to regurgitate and write long statements and constructs. So
is that the curse of knowledge?
Maybe, or it's just not working hard enough just to get it down to a very simple idea. So Singapore Airlines, great way to fly, the romance of travel. My first job as in an agency was with the agency that actually created the Singapore Air brand, the Singapore Girl. And the brief, the campaign brief, was very simple. I want this to make it look like it's a French perfume ad. Why? Romantic. Tiffany, what's the brand idea for Tiffany? It's not just blue. It's enduring love. So these are brands which have really distilled down their core idea or their proposition.
Not going to ask any questions about this, since this is the most common things that normally I'm being asked when I say I'm doing brand for Gradion. And I see our head of marketing sitting over there. So this is the common question that people normally have a misperceptions of, like brand is Malcolm.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
You're right. They think it's just the responsibility of the marketing manager, which is yourself. But look at how this whole event has been affected by all the people here, the environments, the displays, the catering. And I think I came across an example that you posted. What is it, a podcast from Gradion? Was that about three months ago or even longer? Was it last year?
If you were here last year, you may remember that Rich had a session with Joel, and he mentioned the story of Coca-Cola. Who remembered the story?
Okay. So tell us, what happened? I vaguely recall the podcast. Anyone who'd like to, yeah.
So the story is branding is not about a color or logo. The point is everything communicates. And the story is you wake up in the morning, you drive to work, a dirty Coke truck cuts you off. You go to the store, the shelves are dirty, you call to complain. Somebody answers the phone at the Coke headquarters and go, hello. So all the money that you spend in marketing and branding goes to waste because your brand, people don't live your brand.
Right.
So that's the story.
So that's when you switched to Pepsi.
I don't think that's funny.
Okay. All right, so this gentleman in the picture, he's obviously not in the marketing department. But if he's parked illegally or his truck's dirty, he's going to influence your perceptions of that extremely valuable brand.
Wow, and this is the most common perception that I also heard, that brand strategy is somehow somewhat similar to the business strategies.
Which is not wrong. I think that the problem is when people think the brand strategy is the business strategy. And the thing is, you can't brand a bad business strategy or a bad business model. So there has to be something to begin with. There's got to be something that's of value, of benefit, which you can then brand. And maybe just a simple example is a commodity like an apple, right? That apple, we don't know if it's been organically farmed. We don't know if it comes from a farm whose family has had it for generations. We don't know if it's got a specific taste profile or nutritional value. But the questions to those answers are actually to do with the business model. How does that farmer compete and make money based on the decisions he makes for his business? That's when the branding people can come in after that. And just another local example is this brand of mineral water. It's the only Vietnamese brand that's on the fine water silver medal list. And it comes from, I'm going to get this wrong, but is it Tiên Giang province? And it's sourced from natural aquifers, which are 600 feet below the earth. Now, the owners of this brand, they made a big business decision. They decided they weren't going to touch the natural environment. They could have developed the land on top of the aquifers, but they kept it completely clean. So that enhanced the purity of the water. So now this brand is scaling. It's scaling from specialist nutrition areas to mainstream retail formats.
I'm sorry I cut the flow. My mind just got shifted into the previous topic that we talked before this one. When we mentioned about
everything communicate. And I realized we did not talk about the part that we have things offline and things online. And nowadays, today we have a lot of topics about AI, digital world, and so on. Do you have any advice to people that, like especially traditional business or B2B business, how do they do business nowadays in this digital world?
I think you can see signs that that's already changing quite significantly. So let's take the Vietnam property market as an example. Your traditional media would be your sales gallery, your marketing brochure. But you're starting to see a lot of digital technology come through, interactiveness, very interesting virtual tours, and AI is playing a big role in that as well. So I think we're already starting to see that big evolution. I'm sure your job, Jessie, is just as hard with digital as well as traditional media.
Thank you. That's such a powerful reminder. This is going to be the last thing. So let me sum up. The first thing we talk about, that brand is not just a logo. The second topic, we talk about brand is not just vision, mission, value, but actually about the purpose and the why. The third thing, we make it simple, less word. Number 4 is talking about brand is not just Malcolm and everything communicate. Number 5 is brand is from within. Here we have, yes.
I mean, obviously you use your brand to generate revenue for your business, to build customer loyalty. So in that sense, it is external. But when you can really scale your brand is when you can internalize it and create a brand culture. And the best example we can give you here is the Ritz-Carlton. The Ritz-Carlton's brand value doubled yesterday, or rather last year. It's, I think, worth about 1.1 billion now. And they have this beautiful empowerment for their staff. They have something called the $2,000 rule. What that means is that any staff of the Ritz-Carlton, even a housekeeper, a maid, can take the incentive to create an experience and pay for it up to $2,000 US. And this is without manager approval. So this is a very extreme example of how you internalize your brand culture and empower your staff. And their idea is quite nice. It's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, which gives them a very nice sense of pride in their jobs, as well as the $2,000 rule to make things happen. So to your question, that's an example of authenticity. It's not just the logo, it's not the colors, it's the culture. And if you can get that right in your businesses, that's when you could scale your brand.
With all your 33 years in the industry, what is one story, what is the most impressive culture that you have ever witnessed?
That's a tough question. Keppel is a good example of a Singapore company, and they have a culture of excellence which pervades their business. They're obviously a very Singaporean value, culture of excellence, but that's a very strong example of a Singapore brand culture.
Can you tell our audience more about that, how they live that culture, how do they live the brand?
So I'm sure many of you have got values in your organizations. I hope you don't have as many as 9 or 7, maybe you've got 5. Maybe you put them on the boardroom wall, and maybe you can remember them. But what you need to do next is you need to create operational behaviors, rituals, specific ways in which you want your employees to live those values. Don't just let them kind of work it out for themselves, but make it more of a sort of ritual or behavioral experience.
So now I have a few more questions, but I will save this time for our audience to ask questions.
Oh,
In the future, a lot of purchase decisions will be driven through AI agents on our behalf. How do you envisage that as a brand, I help buyers or consumers to program their agents so that the agents choose my brand over a competitive brand, right? Because I need to tell my agent that, oh, I'd rather buy this perfume or that, I'd rather go with this airline or that, but it's a lot more than just saying, well, I prefer Singapore over Scoot.
okay. Again, another good question. I'm assuming that your competitors will be doing the same thing. I'm assuming your competitors will be doing the same thing. So it still comes back to differentiation. And maybe with AI, you've got to think about more of your language, your tonality, and the expression. But also, how does customer loyalty feature in that? How do you create a loyal customer through your agents? So there are still some key principles that are going to apply, but I think the speed and the volume of content that will be generated will be very high. Yeah.
Next question. May I ask the staff to support our audience with a microphone, please? Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I think that's pretty much. That's the last thing that I heard from these presentations is that it sounds like the lesson here is you don't recommend people to spend millions shouting the values to the world. And the recommendation is to leave the brand.
I wouldn't have a problem if anyone in the room wanted to pay me millions of dollars to shout your brand to the world. But let's go with the idea that you keep it simple, start from within, before you start to scale it up like Singapore Airlines.
Thank you very much, Dom.
So the topic of the talk is brands that scale and last. I have realized that in the last couple of years, especially since COVID, the overall perception of brands or even political meanings or whatever has been super polarized, which means that what has been a brand and a brand picture for 5 years, 20 years ago, now has value for 5 months. So it 10x down. The change through TikTok and everything else is so incredibly volatile that even if you would have placed 5 years of brand marketing into a brand, it could be destroyed after a month by one bad press from an influencer. How can a brand or a company be prepared to that shitstorm or negative backlash that could happen without it ever being a bad brand? So the people, they started to not be factual anymore. It's all about emotions today. How can a brand build a factual promise when facts don't count?
Again, another good question. I think you have to have both a factual or a rational aspect as well as emotion, because at the end of the day, you are selling to human beings, presumably. To the point about brand value being destroyed, you just have to think of this as investing credit in your reputation. So if something negative does come along, people are more likely to give you a second chance. So it takes time, it takes money.
I know that.
Yeah.
At 5.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
We have a question in the end of the room.
Hello, hi, my name is Han. Great topic, great conversation,
Thank you.
great questions. I really hear the resonance in your voice and I really appreciate it. One of the things that brand is focused on is external sort of representation, how the audience or how the customers views it. At my company, I created a sort of a vision and a purpose within our company. We want our people. The business that I do doesn't work with, we don't have a lot of customers, we have a lot of clients. Yeah. What's important is our internal employee. That's what's important, and that's the brand we want to build internally. So from your experience, from your perspective, how do you do that effectively? And how do you create a brand for your internal company to follow, to live by?
Well, firstly, can I say, I believe you're doing the right thing by making it internal and therefore more authentic. Would you be living those values yourself as the founder of this company?
Absolutely.
Right. Do you reward people for on-brand behavior, people who live your purpose? Do you reward them financially? Do you punish people who don't? Should you?
No.
No, okay.
No, I don't.
I think what I'm trying to say is you have to be seen to be walking the talk and recognizing those of your people who are exemplary, who are your brand purpose brought to life. And it kind of comes back to the previous answer about don't just stop at values and words, but create the behaviors that you want them to live.
Walk the walk.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's
Thank
the one.
you.
Do you think the culture come from the top or come from within?
Say again.
Do you believe the culture, the real brand that living inside organizations, it come from the top or come from within?
I would go with both. I would think that that direction there was set by the top of the hotel management, but it's also lived by everyone on different levels. They've brought into that vision there. So yeah, I think it's a case of having a strong leader at the top of the company that lives those values, but also someone who recognizes those values being lived at the very bottom and in the middle. So again, it comes back to culture, brand culture.
Any other questions from the crowd?
Whoa.
Oh, we have two more. I think you guys shy from the beginning.
One question, when should a company do brand validation? So to check if they really follow their brand.
Yeah, I couldn't quite catch that. Was it a question, how do they value their brand?
Yeah, brand validation. When should a company do a brand validation?
Validation as in doing a sort of audit or a check? I would say most companies do that every 5 years or so. I thought for a second you said valuation, which is measuring the actual financial value.
No, because some companies, they have brand values, but they never check if they really follow the brand and the values they have.
Right.
So the question is, so should companies do every 3-5 years brand validation? Okay, do we follow seriously our values or not? Or this is not important?
Right. Okay, so values seem to be quite timeless. You wouldn't change them every year. But if you're talking about like a brand, let's say a brand health check, companies normally would do those every 5 years or so. Yeah. Thank you. There's a lady in the middle there, I think. Sorry.
Hi, Dominic. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Kathy. My question is, how do you see founders and executives balance between personal branding and the company's branding? And what are the signals that signifies that you have a credible brand to like investors and buyers, like especially in the beginning?
There's a couple of questions there, is there? Yeah,
yes,
okay.
It's a dual question. Thank you.
Personal branding. So I would argue that these people to have a very strong identity, just as the Singapore girls do as well. So they have been, if you will, branded as part of the company. But you hear about personal branding often on a CEO level. I had a conversation with the CEO in Vietnam about 5 years ago about creating a personal brand for his company. And that would be him having his own kind of style, his own identity, his own content, if you will. So I hope that answers your first question. Your second question was?
What are the signals that basically can tell that there's credibility in your brand right away to first-time buyers and investors?
Okay, so then it's a bit of a theoretical answer, but if you can generate awareness, so people are actually aware of your brand, also you can prove consideration. So let's say I'm one of your customers or potential customers. I'm going to look at your company and your brand as well as your competitors. So am I going to consider you? Am I going to shortlist you down to, say, my last 3? And then the most powerful signal that you've done the job well is preference. I prefer your company over the others. Beyond that, loyalty and advocacy. If you keep me as a customer for 20 years, then you have a strong business, your reputation is strong, and your brand is credible, very credible. Awareness, consideration, preference, loyalty.
Thank you, Dominic.
You're welcome. So,
I actually think it was a good idea to stand up, and I didn't introduce myself for the first question. So, hi, Dominic, I'm Julius. I'm coming from personal experience, a company that has international business and has a couple of entities in completely different cultural environments. How would you say, can a brand have like core values that it transports through completely different political demographic systems? As I realized that what works in Asia does not necessarily work in Germany. And I myself struggle to place us, Gradion, as a company in Germany with the same values that we do in Asia, because Germany wants other things.
Again, thank you. I'm working on a project now which is for a semiconductor company. It's a Singapore company, and they've grown by acquiring businesses. Germany, France, and Holland. So here we have a very interesting situation where even in Europe, there's different cultures. But there's a big difference between the Europeans and the Singaporeans. The Europeans, especially the Germans, and no offense to anyone in the room here, tend to be a bit more direct. And they complain that the Singaporeans are too soft. So we've reached this realization by talking to all of them, all of the managing directors. And now they know that they're going to address it. They know that it's an issue for them. It's a hot button issue. So last week, the CEO suggested to me, he says, can I have a set of just 3 or 2 core values that go across the entire business? And then can I let the Germans come up with one? Let the French come up with one? So it is an unusual situation, but it's because of the cultural diversity in the business.
Thank you so much. Then I have to make a little bit of advertisement for our company, because there is one value that I value myself the most, which I think is globally acceptable, which is given by our founder, Lars. It's fairness.
Fairness.
Fairness, yes. I love it.
I'm sure that works in Germany, doesn't it? Or
Yeah. No, fairness actually, I believe, does not come about prices or what you deliver, but just how you treat people, no matter the culture. Being fair is not culturally dependent on the country. I think being fair is just a human trait. And I think that would have been my answer. If your value is a human trait, it does not matter which country you're from.
yeah, it's kind of universal in a way, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, yes.
Agreed. Yeah.
It is, sorry to Jessie, it's awesome to listen to you, Dominic. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. Any more questions, or I think we've gone over the time limit.
The team just said that we had roughly 4 minutes, so maybe we have two questions, 2 more questions. I'm gonna count down silently in my head in 10 seconds. So thank you very much, Dom. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
And please remain on stage.